I want to welcome everyone. Good afternoon. I'm Debbie Schutt, and I'm chair of the Training and Education Committee of the Michigan Pet Alliance and also on the board of directors. We are glad that you could join us today. And for our second free webinar this year, Great Customer Service for Great Animal Outcomes. We have just a couple of housekeeping items for you. If you would keep your cameras off, it would be appreciated. It just helps when we make the video. I want to thank Karen Patterson, MPA Training and Education Committee member, who is our team's administrator today. She will be monitoring and reading questions. You are welcome to ask questions. We just had a little discussion before we let everybody in that some people could see the Q&A and some people couldn't. So if you see the Q&A, put your questions in the question. If you don't see it, put it in the chat. So the webinar is being recorded today. We will be posting it on our YouTube channel. So we will send out a link when it is ready for viewing. I want to let everyone know that there are a number of workshops coming up being produced by the Michigan Pet Alliance, and they're throughout the state. There's like 10 of them from September 19th through November 16th. And we have collaborated with local shelters to produce these workshops. Now, the local shelters were involved with selecting some of the topics. So if you look at one location to another, the topics may vary. So you might want to look at attending more than one. Anyway, we would encourage you to take a look at them. I did put a link in the chat so you can click on it and get right to the registration. There is a discounted early registration going on right now until July 21st. So hopefully we will see some of you there. So let's get to the presentation. Enough of me. I am pleased to introduce the chair of the Michigan Pet Alliance Board and the CEO of the Humane Society of Huron Valley, Tanya Hilgendorf. Take it away, Tanya.
Oh, thank you, Debbie. Thank you very much. Hello, everyone. I'm going to share my screen right away, so hopefully you can see that okay. Somebody holler if you can't. I am delighted to be here and very grateful for your time and attention. And I'm going to try to be quick and make best use of your time possible and hopefully keep you awake. So we're going to be talking about great customer service for great outcomes. Whoa, did we just lose that? Okay, hold on, guys. Technical problem immediately. Okay, I think I'm back. Hopefully, fingers crossed. So that beautiful smiling face we're starting off with. Here's the things we're going to be talking about today. I just want to remind folks that great customer service is a journey, not a destination. So even if we're feeling like we're doing pretty good, there's always something new to learn, ways to improve. And we do always need to keep adapting to the needs of our customers and the community. So we're going to be talking about how great customer service makes us feel, why it's a challenge for us uniquely in animal welfare, why it's critically important, and how to do it. So when we think about customer service, we want to think about our doggies, right? That the way they act when you get home from work, that happy, so excited to see you. You feel like the most important person in the world. You wish you could find a partner that might greet you like that. Maybe you can, but God bless you if you can. And of course, dogs don't care about the way you look. They're always crazy happy to see you. They're always forgiving, waiting for you to do the right thing. And they're not discriminating. They don't care how much money you have, if you had a bad hair day, or what you accomplished that day. They don't care if you accomplished anything at all. So doggy style is what we say. Now, we love our majestic felines, right? But they are the royalty. So not caddy style, right? We don't want you sleeping through your shifts or peeing on paperwork or staring like we need to reconsider our life choices. So doggies, not kitties. So we love our kitties. So how we are treated affects the way we feel about ourselves and others. It doesn't just, if it's bad customer service, so if you yourself are thinking about how you felt the last time you received bad customer service and just kind of feel that, uh, it doesn't just ruin your day, make you frustrated and mad, but can also put you in a really negative feedback loop where you start talking to others about how you've been mistreated, how someone took forever to do a simple thing, or they didn't seem to care, they didn't want you there, they made multiple mistakes, they never apologized for their mistakes, can even affect our self-esteem. On the other end, how we feel when we receive great customers. We know we need to feel love, we need to feel belonging, we need to feel acceptance and a sense of inclusion. So great customer service is not just superficial, it makes us it affirms our worth and makes us feel seen, respected, welcome, taps into our need, even with strangers. Even kindness from strangers can make us feel less alone. Makes us feel capable and confident, like we made the right decision. So if you go to a bank and do something and you get treated badly and you're like, God, I shouldn't be using that bank. I made the wrong decision there. It affects our mood. So when somebody is kind to us and helpful, if they go above and beyond in a surprising way, that can change our whole mood. That shifts the whole day for us. It makes us like the person helping us. So that's great. It makes us comfortable asking questions. So we really want people to be able to ask questions, and they know we're experts. So they're going to feel uncomfortable thinking this is probably a dumb question, but we need people when they're coming in to adopt or whatever service they're receiving, we want them to be able to ask questions so they understand. It makes people want to come back. If you have a great experience somewhere, that's where your loyalty will lie. And the ripple effects, right? We can't deny that simple acts of kindness, a smile, a kind word, is a powerful way to help someone feel better. And sometimes the way we help change the world through those small acts of kindness. So let's talk about who are our customers. Animals, of course. So basically, it's who we're providing service to. Our adopters, of course, any kind of visitors, our donors, people surrendering their animals, people redeeming their animals, families looking for lost animals, people making cruelty complaints, those who use our clinic or our grooming or our boarding services, of course, our coworkers and volunteers. So last but not least, just a little mention and shout out to our volunteers, because we know in animal welfare there can be conflict between staff and volunteers, and that can be difficult. And I think it's really important to remember that when you think you might be dealing with a difficult volunteer, sometimes, oftentimes, that's just somebody who's worried. And so we want to get underneath the emotion, right? Anger is a secondary emotion. What's underneath it? Fear, sadness, hurt. So we want to be also providing great customer service to our volunteers as well. And really, no one should be exempt from a goal to be kind and helpful. So I want to talk about what makes it uniquely difficult for folks in animal welfare. And I want to do that because it's important to acknowledge the challenges. And if we think about our pressures and limitations, when we talk about those for ourselves, we're also practicing self-compassion and self-love, because we know folks who are working in animal welfare are under intense pressure. We have limited resources. We are emotionally tired. We're often physically tired, and we have to make really difficult decisions. So those are really important challenges to think about as animal advocates. So other issues about making it difficult. We don't see a lot of training. Thank you for being here. This is just a drop in the bucket. We need our shelters, our animal control facilities, our rescue groups to be training people on customer service. If you want an organizational culture around great service, then we have to provide training. And too often we don't see any training, barely any training at all, because of limited resources. And I will tell you that the 20-60-20 rule. So when we think about hiring and training, they say about 20% of people automatically phenomenal at customer service. It's just embedded in their personality and who they are. About 60% trainable, can be great, but they need support and information ongoing. And then another 20%, doesn't matter what you provide, they will likely never be great at customer service. And so those are the folks you may want working on your computers, or you may want to help them find the door, because you don't really want people who are bad working with other people in your organization, because it hurts everyone. Personal stress from home. So we all have it. Everybody has personal stress, and we have to work on finding ways to not bring that into the workplace. Difficult or demanding customers. So it can feel unfair when people aren't nice back. So I do just want to remind people that about 25% of the population at any given time is struggling with a serious mental illness, substance abuse, serious substance abuse addiction, and possibly some form of dementia. I'm going to say at least 25%. So you're often dealing with people who have their own deep challenges. They're not just being difficult. They have serious challenges. So just to keep that in mind, right? Sometimes we see that people in the service role feel undervalued or looked down upon. So nobody wants to feel like that. And this is not a hierarchy, right? It is an honor and a privilege to be able to help people and help animals, but we're not doing it from a lesser than position. When our coworkers are providing poor service, when negative Nancy is right next to you, maybe you feel kind of silly being happy and enthusiastic with the customer. So that's bringing you down. And do we have a tendency to judge, blame, shame, and get on our soapbox in animal welfare? Yes, we of course do. I'm sure everybody is nodding their heads right now if I could see those heads. So that makes it a real challenge to provide great customer service if we're in that blaming and shaming game. And negative emotions feed more negativity. So I just want to talk about the neuroscience around negative emotions. All emotions carry an energetic frequency. This is scientific fact. It's not just woo-woo information. And often attracting similar emotions bring other similar emotions. Calm draws more calm. Anxiety creates more tension. So we attract what we're feeling. So that's really important to remember. I'm not saying that we need to pretend everything is great. We need to address problems, but we need to address problems with optimism and hope, rather than being stuck in that negative space. And then remembering, again, a little neuroscience, neurons that fire together, wire together. That means what we practice emotionally, mentally, and behaviorally gets stronger. So the more negative you are, the more badly you feel. You don't want to be in that negative spiral. You need to be able to bring it up. That's an important part of our emotional regulation. Let's see. Other ways that make it very difficult for us. What we know is sometimes love stinks, right? This work can take a real emotional toll on us. We're here because we love deeply, but shelters are full of suffering and limited resources and stress. And our love can become painful and exhausting. And I would say even corrosive. That's where burnout and resentment and apathy comes in. We simply get tired of watching people do bad things to animals. And often we're not dealing directly with the enemy and we have no one to be mad at. And so we can direct that to our coworkers or our customers. And we know there are continuous feelings of loss and grief, worry, and sadness in a shelter. Even when we're happy about something, we still can feel a sense of loss. You may have gotten attached to an animal, your foster animal, when we are doing this a long time and we're not practicing that regulation and figuring out how to be optimistic, we start to lose faith in humanity, right? We start to become distrustful of all people. And that leads us to other problems in customer service when we don't trust anyone, including compassion fatigue. So addressing the challenges, right? Let's talk about that grief that we just mentioned. You want to acknowledge your grief and the grief of others. So when we acknowledge it, we help integrate it. When we push it down, it festers, right? Like an infected, like a splinter that becomes infected, right? You want to feel it and let it go so it doesn't turn into a chronic depression or anxiety. That's a key part of saying, I want to heal, is part of our emotional hygiene, taking care of ourselves so that resentment or depression doesn't close our hearts, because we need to keep doing this work with our hearts open. And if you don't acknowledge your grief, if you don't give it a name, if you don't give it any space whatsoever, whether that space is through words or tears or ritual, again, if you don't allow the emotions a little breathing space to flow out, right, and scar over, then they remain raw and taking over. Gratitude is a wonderful way to help bring more positivity and healing into your life. So research shows gratitude improves mood, relationships, sleep. It also reduces anxiety and depression. Those are pretty great things, right? And it's completely free and has no negative side effects. Doesn't make you gain weight, doesn't interrupt your sleep. So gratitude is incredibly important. And and I'm not going to go back, but I am going to talk about faking till you make it. So what that, I was able to go back. What that means for faking till you make it. Now, I don't mean being inauthentic, because nobody likes that. What I mean is that research shows that acting confident and positive will make you feel that way. So it can just acting like you feel better can shift your mood and your mindset. Smiling, standing tall, right? You've maybe seen the TED Talk about how your posture, standing tall and feeling strong, we can do it, right? Can influence how you see yourself and how other people see you. So again, we want to make it grounded in being genuine effort and growth, and not just pretending. So more ways to address challenges. self-care. We hear a lot about self-care and managing stress and working on our emotional regulation. And I guess of course, we could have our own webinar just on that topic, but getting a massage once a month isn't going to cut it. Go do it, yes, but self-care has to be a part of every single day. We also want to be having fun. There are lots of parts of the day that can be really fun, and your own day when you're not at work, make sure you're having fun, keeping balance in your life. Leave work at work and go out and have some fun. Now, we do deal with a lot of suffering that's right in front of us, a lot of sadness, a lot of grief. So we always say, keep your eyes on the prize. And for me, what that means is we focus on what really matters, our mission, our deeper purpose. When things get hard and messy and overwhelming, we think about why. Why am I doing this work? It's so important that we stay focused on the long-term impacts over short-term frustrations. And over time, we do see a lot of change. I tell folks in the 1970s, the Humane Society of Huron Valley was killing 25,000 animals a year. It's a number I can't even imagine, and I can't imagine anybody happily working here when all you're doing is killing all day long. But what a dramatic change. Now, our save rate is about 97%, and we can focus on the very few animals that we have to put down who are dangerous or dying, and all the amazing animals that we save, even though in between there is a lot of work and challenges. So we want to keep our eyes on the bigger picture. Our positive thoughts are really important, staying focused on hopeful thinking. And that allows us to build more resilience and create better results, right? Because you all may have heard of Joe Dispenza, but and all the other folks on podcasts now that are telling us that our intentions and our feelings do shape our reality. So positive thoughts lead to positive outcomes. And of course, if you need professional help, no shame in that. Please get it. So other challenges. Again, we can be pretty judgy. So we need to be really careful that judgment shuts people down and people cannot grow, right? We need to lead with empathy, connection, and not shaming. Again, golden rule, we don't like to feel shamed or criticized or looked down upon. That will make us feel angry, withdrawn, and defensive. People are much more likely to grow when they are feeling safe, respected, and understood. I'm not saying everybody's capable of growth. I've met a few who I question, but we can only grow if people believe in us, right? If your therapist doesn't like you, you're not going to start feeling better. It's going to be difficult. If your teacher calls you stupid, you're not going to do well on your tests, most of us anyway. So that's really important that we approach not with shaming, but with respect and understanding. So why do we even bother? That's why we're all here. What is the point of putting all this effort in? Well, of course, because it allows us to meet our mission. We need people, right? We can't do our work without people. We can't say I like animals, but not people, because we are people and we need people. We need them to adopt. Obviously, we need them to volunteer, to call us for help, to bring us animals in need. We need people to trust and like us. We need them to help spread our message. Now, this is something I pulled off the internet ages ago. It kind of looks like that, but it sums it up pretty quickly. So Luke says, yeah, I took kittens to Humane Society before. They treated me like I was a criminal. I took the kittens and left. Screw them. This really encapsulates a lot of what we're talking about. Is Luke experienced a negative emotion when he thought he was doing the right thing. He thought he was acting responsibly. He felt criticized and unwelcome. That triggered defensiveness and hostility. He lost trust, and he is spreading the message. So we can see how harmful that can be. And then most of all, the kittens didn't get the help that they needed. This is more of our why. So if you haven't seen this report, I highly recommend it. This is the Hills 2025 State of Shelter Pet Adoptions Report. And you don't have to read all this. I'll summarize it for you. These were just a few hot takes that I took out of there. We are big-hearted people, and we tend to make decisions with emotion. And sometimes the emotion is anxiety and worry and fear. And of course, what we care about is a part of the equation, but you don't want fear to be driving a decision. Fear is not good for anybody. So when we look at restrictions on housing, so doing housing checks and landlord checks, vet references, we know evidence shows that prevents animals younger people are saying they feel the pressure to meet a gold standard of care. If we wanted everybody to meet the gold standard, the proportion of adopters would be very, very small. So we want to think about that. We want you to be good. You want me to be loving, but nobody is perfect. Nobody is perfect. What they told us of the length of stay for large dogs on average throughout the country has increased by 9 days. If you have 1,000 dogs, that's 9,000 days of care. If it's $30 a day for care, it's $300,000, right? Check my math. Now, they say this happened since 2019. Why are we measuring from 2019? That's because a lot of places we have done worse. We know things are getting worse since COVID. There are many factors that play into that. One of them is that some of us are still using COVID restrictions. They're making it more difficult for people to visit with animals and to complete an adoption in a timely way. According to a survey, also says adoption counselors play a vital role in shaping positive outcomes and pet retention. So realistic expectations, taking the time to understand needs and wants, doing effective matching. That's those conversational adoptions. It doesn't mean giving, the 85-year-old a 1-year-old husky. It means understanding people and animals and talking it through with them and making a good match that will make everybody happy. And then there's a great example in here of a Humane Society in Kansas City said they went from a 14-page adoption application and an average length of stay of 257 days. 257 days. When they embraced barrier-free, relationship-centered model, they reduced length of stay to just 13 days. So I don't know. That's pretty phenomenal. As if we need more evidence, but more on the why, right? It saves headaches. We know that the number one ways we feel good about our jobs is how we feel about our coworkers. So if you have too many negative Nancy's in your shelter, it's going to be a crummy place to work. That's going to be a bad culture. If a lot of people are running around complaining a lot, it's bad for them, their coworkers, customers, and animals. It increases turnover. Again, we're not ignoring problems, but we address problems by looking for solutions in a positive way. And I will say, we don't want our animals experiencing that bad energy, right? Everybody can feel the energy, including animals, maybe especially animals. And we don't want them feeling that. We want animals and people feeling good in our shelters. And when we provide great customer service, it reduces the problems and the complaints we experience from the public, which are costly, time consuming, and energy wasting. And so this is always my quote from the great REO Speedwagon. Most of you are probably too young to know who that is. Talk is cheap when the story is good, and tales grow taller on down the line. And what we mean by that is if you're going to tell a story, you're going to make it good. That's all of us. And then other people are going to repeat it, believe it, keep telling it, right? And the story becomes bigger and bigger, and pretty soon you have a giant octopus of a problem. So great customer service also involves addressing complaints swiftly. Again, that's a whole another webinar about how we address complaints, but we use compassion and empathy and not defensiveness. More of the why: we need people to give us money. We need people to give us support. We need donors. Donors are our community members, right? Not Brad Pitt donating to our shelters. It's people down the street. So we need to be treating everybody well and remembering that adopters, donors, and taxpayers pay our salaries. Why else? Because people are who we are. They're part of our brand image, our identity. They say you never get a chance to make a second impression, but you never get a second chance to make a first impression. Sorry. And what we mean by that, you do, but it takes a lot longer to fix a bad experience. And every person who has a bad experience they used to say 20 people. Now it's a gazillion people because they get online and tell everybody. So marketing, remember, is your best marketing is word of mouth, and creates customer loyalty and keeps people coming back. And of course, the biggest also why, because it's the right thing to do. We live in a really divided and scary and sad world, and spreading kindness has ripple effects of connection and healing and hope. So it's the right thing to do to treat people humanely. So let's get to the how. Okay, let's go back to these, the red tape. Accessibility and ease is really important. Hours, days, connection. Customer service is often about how we treat people when they get through the door, but we have to get them through the door, right? That is really critical. So your days of operation, your hours, having evenings and weekends is really critical. It's also just basic math. If customers are allowed in your building, or visitors are allowed in your building, 20 hours a week versus 50 hours a week, are you going to do more or less adoptions? Just basic math. Also, lots of people work traditional 9 to 5s during the weekday. If you're only open during the week, somewhere within the 9 to 5, you're missing a lot of people. So, we are always telling people, adopt, don't shop. It's really important. We want people to adopt, don't shop. But sometimes we make it impossible for people to adopt. We kind of invite them in, and then we slam the door in their face. Letting people in is also critical. To let them see the animals, let people interact with the animals so they can fall in love. Connection is really critical, and they may have just come to see, and oftentimes people leave with animals because they fell in love. You're losing a lot of people by saying you need to make an appointment and already pick your animal online, fill out your application, and then maybe, we'll see what happens. The application process, we just heard, lengthy applications, a lot of requirements, wait time, it deters people. So we want conversational adoptions. Please remember to answer the phone. I mean, it's really, really critical. Answer the phone or call people back. Those things really do matter. Lengthy, judgmental process, long wait times is a major deterrent that is causing us to lose adopters. If, say, 60% of people, 40% of people are adopting, that's a lot of people we're missing out on. How can we bring those folks into the fold? That's what we need to be thinking about. I don't like hassle and red tape. Good people, busy families do not like hassle and wait times. Everybody values convenience. Everybody. I don't know. A lot. People will pay a lot of money for convenience. So think about your competition. I could right now probably go buy a puppy online with one click of the button, and that puppy will be delivered to my door. So think retail. How do I make this process? Again, you want to make good matches, but how do I make this convenient and easy on people and make people feel welcomed? Because we've all been Amazoned and we're not turning that around. And keep your information up to date online and engaging. So everybody is can know as much as possible about animals already. This is out of state shelter. Somebody called me saying they desperately need help. They can't get their animals adopted. I went straight to their website. They wanted us to take their animals, but what I found was they were open just a few hours a day in the middle of the day. No evenings, no weekends. You had to call to make an appointment. And when I picked up the phone to call, the phones didn't work. So I was like, yeah, nobody's adopting because they can't get in. So that is really important. So let's talk about some really key ingredients to customer service. We want to be consistent in our customer service because you never ever know who's coming through the door. Right? You never really know. I'm going to go back because flexibility is a key ingredient also to great customer service. Rules are made to be broken, I say. You need rules, you need SOPs, but humans and animals are not machines. We need to be able to have flexibility and compassion over rigid policy so we can be creative and humane, right? Going the extra mile, really critical. So again, that builds loyalty and trust. Very, very important. I'm just going to go back for a second because we skipped a few things. Sorry about that. Another key ingredient for great customer service is being polite, appreciative, and empathic. I know it sounds really simple, but everybody appreciates kindness, saying thank you, thanking people for their patience, for adopting. I always have a thing about when somebody says thank you to you, say you're welcome or you're happy to help them. I have a pet peeve about when people say no problem, because sometimes I think it insinuates it is a problem. Apologizing, really important. Even if it's not your fault, get your ego out of the way. It's not about you. So making sure like, oh, wow, I'm sorry that happened if somebody's frustrated. I understand your frustration. Please allow me to fix the problem. These are empathy statements, acknowledging how somebody's feeling and letting them know what you're going to do about it. You clearly love your pet. We know this isn't easy. We're here to help, not judge. Those are really great statements, being kind, empathic, appreciative, helping people feel seen and valued, right? Some of us can get pretty triggered when we feel ignored. So it's really important to acknowledge folks. Being helpful, really, really important key ingredient to customer service. So You want to welcome people with a smile, of course. Don't turn your head and pretend you don't see them like as I say, my scared beagle who pretended my cats did not exist. He always looked in the opposite direction. Talk to people, offer them help. How can I help you today? Seems basic, but it can be really hard to do in our shelters when we're really busy and stressed. Active listening. What is active listening? So we want to listen because the more we know, the better we can help people. That means paying attention. I say, like you're on a first date. Show you're listening. Paraphrase, so you show you understand. Ask clarifying questions. Please avoid assumptions and stereotypes. And always the Q-tip, quit taking it personally. People's moods or grumpiness isn't about you personally. So kind of really have to avoid that. And again, matching over scrutinizing needs and wants of animals with needs and wants of humans. Very important. And there's those great ears. We want to be listening because the best way to persuade people is by listening. We've covered this one already about being flexible and going the extra mile. Again, that makes people really give people a memorable experience and they go home talking about you. Enthusiasm. So while we have a lot of sadness and stress here, we really also have puppies and kittens and bunnies. Oh my, right? So let's be enthusiastic and happy where we can and be great role models for other people. But let's focus on the good, right? And wouldn't you love someone to go home and talk about how wonderful you were when they experienced you in the shelter, that they used your name in a loving and positive way, right? And remember that happy people also take better care of their animals. So enthusiasm means being friendly, upbeat, having fun, and not being too serious, right? We have serious work to do, but we don't have to take ourselves too seriously. Now, I'm going to go back to the smiling again because I just think it's really critical. We talked about it before. Emotions can drive behavior and behavior can drive emotions. So smiling, even if you're forcing it, you know, that study where folks put a pencil in their mouth, which forced a smile, actually then made people feel better. So smiling also activates what they call the mirror neurons, something experienced by a lot of mammals. Which is whatever emotion we see is the emotion we're going to give back. So if you smile at someone, they're likely to smile right back. And then we kind of shift the mood towards warmth and happiness, right? And that's really what we all want, that a simple smile can change the tone of an entire interaction. So a great quote, sometimes your joy is the source of your smile, but sometimes your smile is the source of your joy. And again, it's contagious, scientifically proven. Being accurate is really important. Isn't it frustrating when you're dealing with any kind of organization or business and people tell different staff employees tell you different things and you're not sure what you're supposed to do? Or the same if you're getting maybe medical care, causes a lot of frustration and anger. So we want to be accurate, get people the right answers. We certainly, if somebody asks us a question, even if it's not our job, we don't want to say, I don't know, or that's not our job, right? We have to go get that answer. You want people to understand. Again, we don't want them to, so take the time to explain thoroughly. Simplify your procedures as much as possible. Go through those procedures. Be a secret shopper. See what it feels like, how long it takes, what you come across. You'd be probably shocked at what you found. Avoid jargon. It's so hard. We got a lot of jargon in this industry and people don't work here and often they don't know what we're talking about. The other day we had a board meeting. There was a staff person presenting and they were using a lot of jargon that we use inside the organization. And I saw a lot of blank stares from board members, but nobody ever asked, what the heck are you talking about? But I knew they were thinking it. And so we did go back and address it, but it's really important to know that if you use jargon, people aren't going to know what you're talking about and they may not ask. So really avoid that jargon. And then again, we talked about consistency, but you never know who's coming through the door. So a quick recap here is we want to be accessible. Let them in the door, let them interact with animals, be open, answer the phones, be kind, polite, and empathic. Help people with what they need, be flexible, be enthusiastic, accurate, and consistent. So some of those are the really key factors. There are other factors there, and you might want to think about for your particular organization, right? You could do some brainstorming with your group. What are the factors that you think are key to great customer service? And get everybody together to agree on those factors. And again, the golden rule, if you just put yourself in someone else's space and, instead of thinking them as the other, that usually gets us to great customer service. So I have talked a lot, and I want to thank everyone for your attention. And now we have a little time for questions if folks have any.
I know we've had a couple of problems with the audio, so we're having it right this second. So Karen, I think that was probably you. If you could repeat what you said.
Oh, sure. Absolutely. Yeah. If anybody does have any questions, if you want to drop those in the chat or in the Q&A, and then we can read those and get those answered.
One of the things, Tanya, that I had, you had broken down so much for the internet, right? And you were making a really important point, and I was so sad that we lost it. But it was when you were talking about all the barriers.
Oh.
The checking out of the vet records or the whatever it is. If you could briefly just highlight those again, I would appreciate it because we did miss it.
Oh, I'm so sorry. Yes. So what we're finding, let me see even if I can go back to that slide, maybe. No, that'll take forever. What we're finding is that strict adoption policies, rules, regulations just keep adopters out. So if we're talking about lengthy applications, vet checks with your landlords, do people do income checks? Do you have a fenced-in yard? Those kinds of restrictions, and also lengthy, time-consuming applications, a lengthy process where I can't even get in to see the animal, to bond with that animal, and I'm doing that online. I'm waiting for someone to approve my application, who's then going to call me, and then we're playing phone tag. I mean, I remember my brother-in-law trying to adopt an animal from a local rescue, and he said, it feels like I'm trying to get a bomb on a plane. I mean, when we do that, we know evidence-wise that we are losing adopters because it is too easy to go and buy an animal, and people want to do the right thing. We say adopt, don't shop. We have to welcome them in. We can't just say come and adopt, and then they can't even get in the building, or you're barely open, or we have to fill out this long application, or nobody returns my phone call. So we got to put our money where our mouth is, right? Or our values where our mouth is. Whatever it is, we've got to work harder to realize that we need to be welcoming, that we are creating our own barriers to adoptions that is increasing length of stay, and that doesn't just hurt the animals and the people in the building. When an animal stays longer than they need to, right? They become stressed, they become sick, they may become unadoptable. That is tragic. And you also can't help more animals in need. And we have long waiting lists and strays we can't take in. So the ramifications of putting up barriers are incredible, right? Negatively incredible. Does that cover most of what we're thinking we might have missed, Debbie?
Yeah, I think it does. I think
Okay.
it does. Yeah.
I'm not seeing any other additional questions in the chat yet.
I think part of that is because, geez Louise, some of this stuff is really familiar, but oh my goodness, sometimes it's so hard to practice.
It is. It is. It is. That's why we want to acknowledge all the things that make it really difficult, and love ourselves first, right? Everything always starts with self-love, and then it can flow from you. Now, we did have somebody, I think, who raised their hand. Can you see that, Karen?
I can. Oh, and I think the question for that person just came through as well too. So the question is, so if you advocate against such barriers, how do you propose that they screen for quality adopters?
Excellent question. So this, what we call this today is conversational adoptions. So we don't think of it as screening, we think of it as matching. How do we understand the needs and wants of an animal and the needs and wants of a person and put those together? So that's by connection. That's by talking to people, understanding, listening to what it is they want and need and what they're capable of. So you can certainly talk about, well, this animal can't go home with another dog. Do you have other dogs? Simple questions like that can get to what you need. Or you can see, how much energy do you want to be walking a dog 3 times a day that might be pulling you down the street? So it is through conversation versus a piece of paper that is scrutinizing and making somebody feel judged. And I can also tell you, if you gave me a long application that I was filling out and I decided to fill it out, I probably wouldn't be completely truthful on that application. I would say, what is it that these folks want to hear? And I have had people tell me that. So years ago, we used to tell people, you can't let your cats outside. And guess what everybody knew? Don't tell the Humane Society you're going to let your cat outside. Simple as that. So when you make a hard screening like that, you don't get a chance to say, here are the dangers to letting your cat outside. Here's a safer way to do it. So we provide education. If this is something you want, let's find you an animal that is going to be okay outside, that's going to want to be outside. And here's all the ways that you can do that well. So if we don't talk about it and we just screen it on an application and they check what you want to hear, that's why it's not good proof of who's going to be a good owner and a good match for an animal.
I have to say, I just have to add this. Sorry about cutting in here, but
Yeah.
I watched a presentation at one of the conferences on conversational adoptions, and what they did is they had all of the panelists fill out a regular application and then went through it and just and the panelists were all people that were really involved with animal welfare, and they all failed.
Yeah.
And that was because the critical questions were not asked. So when it said, did you give a rabies vaccination to your dog last year? And they marked no. Well, the reason it was no was because there was a health issue and the vet said, we need to not do this because of this reason. So you don't know that unless you have the conversation.
Yes, I would agree. And please jump in with anything, anybody who wants to add some information. I'll just also give that example that also the things that you think are super responsible. I'll say I have a family member or an ex-family member, super type A. She got everybody vaccinated when she was supposed to. She would look absolutely incredible on an application, except she didn't really like animals and she didn't bond with her animals. And I would say the most important thing, the number one thing, is love. Not did you get that animal vaccinated yearly on time, right? I myself had a cat in an apartment when I was younger, and that was a violation of my lease. You know what? That was my business. I always tell people, you want to violate your lease? That's your problem. That's not my problem. It's not my problem to tell you how to follow your lease, right? That's up to you. And that cat lived a wonderful, long, wonderful life. So yes, we're not looking for perfection here, right? We're looking for love and good care.
Well, we are pretty close at the bewitching hour here, which means, oh, lunch is over and then we have to go back to work. So, Karen, if there are no more questions, are there any more?
No, I don't see any additional questions.
Okay, well then I want to thank Tanya for sharing with us today. I also want to thank Karen for producing all the behind the scenes stuff and getting the webinar up and running. I just want to encourage anyone here, if you and your shelter are not members of the Michigan Pet Alliance, I'd encourage you to join. Members receive discounts and are kept informed as to our legislative activities in Lansing, which really important because we are there advocating and trying to introduce bills that are important. But you know what? The more we in animal welfare and the whole industry, the more we coordinate, collaborate, and speak with one voice, the more powerful we are to protect those in our care. So I want to thank you for joining us today. Have yourself a great afternoon. Goodbye.
Thank you, everyone.